proficient to a limited extent. Specifically, they are proficient in turning the computer on and off. Winifred's performance, of course, greatly disappointed Hansen. Hansen immediately contacted several other work groups, and then he felt relieved. The other work groups didn't even know how to disassemble the D-rank infinite armor and even asked if they could use brute force to disassemble it. This was not only the case for the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster civilization, but also for many other star cluster level civilization. Only the Silver Flame Super Star Cluster civilization and the Amethyst Universe level civilization performed slightly better. However, neither the Silver Flame Super Star Cluster civilization nor the Amethyst Universe level civilization could reverse engineer the D-rank infinite armor. But it didn't matter, because Gu Qijue soon did another thing that made everyone's scalp tingle with shock. He open-sourced the prototype of the D-rank infinite armor. 385, troublesome visitor. Even open source can't replicate it. Gu Qijue and the Infinite Empire have now transformed from rising stars in the Star Cluster Alliance into its focal point. The Infinite Empire has successfully passed evaluation and officially become a Star Cluster level power. The D-rank infinite armor that Gu Qijue brought out this time is extremely valuable. As long as there are enough D-rank infinite armor sets, the strength of each Star Cluster level power in the Star Cluster Alliance can increase exponentially. Unfortunately, the D-rank infinite armor has extremely high technological content. Many Star Cluster civilizations are even unable to completely disassemble the D-rank infinite armor, let alone reverse engineer it. However, Gu Qijue, head of the Infinite Empire, seemed to know what everyone needed. So, when everyone was feeling overwhelmed, he open-sourced the D-rank infinite armor. Open-sourcing technology means publicly releasing all relevant technical data. Gu Qijue naturally did just that, and this action once again sparked heated discussion among everyone in the Star Cluster Alliance. Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, Supreme Council Hall. Star Cluster head Gabriel listened intently to the reports from those below. After everyone finished speaking, he calmly said, "So, the open-source data Gu Qijue released is fake. And that's why we can't replicate it?" Hansen shook his head and said, "The open-source data Gu Qijue released is all real. Theoretically, we can manufacture the D-rank infinite armor. However, the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster does not possess such advanced manufacturing technology. So, even if we had all the manufacturing data, we still wouldn't be able to produce the D-rank infinite armor." Hearing this, Your Excellency, Head of State Gabriel, was very disappointed. No matter the matter, if it's only theoretically possible, then it's equivalent to impossible. Just as theoretically anyone could win the lottery, yet among these people, only a very small number actually win. Theoretically possible means there is a huge gap between theory and reality. Gabriel pondered for a moment, then asked, "Can we jointly manufacture it with other star cluster level civilizations?" Hansen shook his head again. "Currently, there are no suitable partners. According to the current situation, even with multi-star cluster cooperation, it would be difficult to produce the D-rank infinite armor." Similar conversations continued to play out among more than 80 star cluster level civilizations in the Star Cluster Alliance. Everyone wanted to manufacture the D-rank infinite armor themselves, but no one possessed the necessary technology. The only way to obtain the D-rank infinite armor seemed to be to purchase it at a high price from the Infinite Empire. Although the price of the D-rank infinite armor was very high, most star cluster level civilizations still decided to purchase as many as possible. Amethyst Cosmic Civilization, Interstellar War Academy Principal's Office. This was Gu Qijue's office, and at this moment, besides Gu Qijue, there were quite a few guests in the principal's office. These guests were representatives from numerous star cluster level civilizations. They came here with two objectives. One objective was to purchase D-rank infinite armor. The other objective was to conduct joint research and development with the Infinite Empire. They wanted to see if there were any alternative solutions that would allow various star cluster level civilizations to produce nanoarmor comparable to the D-rank infinite armor themselves. The principal's office at the Interstellar War Academy was as spacious as a conference hall. At this moment, over 30 representatives and Gu Qijue were in the office, and it didn't feel crowded. Wang Hao, the representative of the Green Light Star Cluster civilization, spoke first. "Your Excellency, the head of state, can the production equipment for the D-rank infinite armor be open-sourced?" Gu Qijue said without hesitation. "No, the production equipment for the D-rank infinite armor is the infinite engine. How could that be open-sourced?" The Infinite Engine is the most brilliant pearl of Crystal Clan technology. Even the Stigma civilization might not be able to easily replicate it. Even if he open-sourced the Infinite Engine, everyone still wouldn't be able to manufacture it. Wang Hao was clearly not giving up. He carefully chose his words and then said earnestly, "Your Excellency, the head of state, the Klein people are the common enemy of everyone in the Star Cluster Alliance. The D-rank Infinite Armor is a sharp weapon against the Klein people. An F-rank cosmic warrior entering the battlefield is very likely to die. If he could possess a set of D-rank Infinite Armor, he could contribute more to the Star Cluster Alliance. He could kill more enemies, and he might even appear alive before his wife and children. A set of D-rank Infinite Armor can save a warrior, save a family, and even save the fate of the Star Cluster Alliance. I don't understand why Chief Gu is unwilling to open-source the production equipment for the Infinite Armor." The words of Wang Hao, the representative of the Green Light Star Cluster, were a heavy blow to Gu Qijue. Delivered from a moral high ground, his impassioned speech also received support from other Star Cluster representatives. Everyone's gaze turned to Gu Qijue, waiting for him to provide a reasonable explanation. Facing their piercing gazes, Gu Qijue said without hesitation, "Because even if it were open-sourced, you still wouldn't be able to manufacture the production equipment. The manufacturing technology for the equipment that produces the D-rank Infinite Armor can, of course, also be open-sourced. But even if it were open-sourced, it's still the same, you wouldn't be able to manufacture it. There are some unique things that only I possess, so others cannot achieve the same results in the same way as me." My words might be a bit convoluted, but I believe you all understand, right? Gu Qijue's words made Wang Hao's face flush red. Moreover, seeing Gu Qijue's confident and self-assured demeanor, everyone present understood that Gu Qijue was absolutely not talking nonsense. Gu Qijue indeed possessed something unique that prevented others from using the same methods as him. However, all roads lead to Rome, and theoretically, everyone could find other methods. This time, Wang Hao remained silent. At this point, it wasn't Gu Qijue's problem but their own, so he naturally had nothing to say. After a brief silence, the representative of the Silver Flame Superstar Cluster Civilization said earnestly, "Your Excellency, the head of state, can the Infinite Empire and the Star Cluster Alliance jointly research and develop a product that can equivalently replace the D-rank Infinite Armor?" After Chen Cheng asked, he and the other representatives looked at Gu Qijue intently. This time, Gu Qijue nodded very straightforwardly, "Yes." This outcome surprised everyone and also made them very happy, but they were clearly happy too soon. Because Gu Qijue's next sentence was, "The Infinite Empire can provide technical support, but this matter is not easy. Within 300 to 500 years, no results should be seen. Every day that passes, a star cluster-level civilization could suddenly die and be occupied by the Klein people. The people of the Star Cluster Alliance clearly did not have 300 to 500 years to dedicate to this matter." 386. Amethyst Civilization Order, Infinite Battle Device. This time, Gu Qijue had no intention of letting everyone leave disappointed after arriving with high hopes. Although many Star Cluster-level civilizations had little to do with the D-rank Infinite Armor, Gu Qijue had already conceived many products these past few days. When the representatives of many Star Cluster civilizations were somewhat dejected, Gu Qijue smiled and said, "The D-rank Infinite Armor has wide applications and amazing effects, but its drawback is also fatal. Its price is too high, leading to a low cost-effectiveness. However, the Infinite Empire doesn't only have the D-rank Infinite Armor as a product. Next, the Infinite Empire plans to develop at least 2 products from a cost-effectiveness perspective. I believe these 2 products will be useful to everyone in the Star Cluster Alliance." This news greatly surprised the representatives of many Star Cluster civilizations. However, after the highly successful D-rank Infinite Armor, everyone had great confidence in the Infinite Empire's technology. Since Gu Qijue said they would develop such products, the Infinite Empire would surely be able to do it. Chen Cheng immediately spoke, saying, "Thank you, Chief Gu, and thank you, Infinite Empire, for your outstanding contributions to the Star Cluster Alliance." After he finished speaking, representatives from other Star Cluster civilizations also spoke one after another. Everyone would take this information back. Their visit to the Interstellar War Academy this time could barely be considered fruitful, rather than returning empty-handed. This series of news quickly spread through the Star Cluster Alliance communication channels, sparking widespread discussion. Some people still did not give up. wanting to continue their research and development to create infinite armor. Many others, however, began to anticipate the two products the Infinite Empire was about to launch. A very small number of people were also negotiating the purchase of D-rank infinite armor with Gu Qijue. The representative of this small group was, of course, the Amethyst civilization. The Amethyst civilization lacked nothing but money. For the Amethyst civilization, any problem that could be solved with money was not a problem. The one discussing cooperation with Gu Qijue this time was also no ordinary person. It was Southern Emperor Nangang Dangsu, one of the four emperors of the Amethyst civilization. Amethyst Star City, Southern Emperor's Palace, Main Hall. Nangang Dangsu still sat on the magnificent floating throne, looking at Gu Qijue, who was standing not far away. Beside Gu Qijue, Lin Heifei was still accompanying him. After observing Gu Qijue for a moment, the Southern Emperor said, "The Amethyst civilization can procure D-rank infinite armor long-term. I need a sincere price." Although the Amethyst civilization had a lot of money, they clearly didn't want to be taken advantage of. 100 billion E-rank energy stones for one set of infinite armor. The Amethyst civilization was not satisfied with this price. Gu Qijue pondered for a moment and then asked the Southern Emperor, "Your Majesty Empress Nan, what is your ideal price?" He could now produce an economic version of the infinite armor, which was almost comparable to the original model. However, it used a large number of cost-effective materials in the manufacturing process, so the cost was only 50 billion E-rank energy stones. Nangang Dangsu said without hesitation, 60 billion E-rank energy stones, which is 600 million D-rank energy stones for one set of infinite armor. Even at this price, Gu Qijue could still earn a difference of 100 million. If the Infinite Empire had other competitors, Gu Qijue would certainly have agreed. However, the Infinite Empire currently had no other competitors. The infinite armor product was unique, there was no other branch. In other words, it was currently a seller's market, not a buyer's market. After a brief thought, Gu Qijue said to Nangang Dangsu, 900 million D-rank energy stones for one set of D-rank infinite armor. This price, of course, was very insincere. Therefore, Gu Qijue had other additional terms. In the future, the Amethyst civilization can purchase any product from the Infinite Empire at a 10% discount. Nangang Dangsu's usually cold face couldn't help but reveal a slight smile this time. She was very satisfied with this outcome. For unknown reasons, the Infinite Empire seemed to have mastered very high-end technology. In the future, the Infinite Empire would inevitably release many more very useful products. If the Infinite Empire's products were sold to the Amethyst civilization at a 10% discount, then the Amethyst civilization would implicitly save a significant amount of expenditure. Nangang Dangsu nodded in satisfaction and then asked, "Can I first see the other two new products that the Infinite Empire is about to release?" This request was not excessive. The Infinite Empire's other two new products had also been developed long ago. Gu Qijue immediately took out two spatial devices and handed them to Lin Heifei. Lin Heifei, at the Southern Emperor's signal, opened these two spatial devices. Inside the first spatial device was a tech bracelet. Seeing this product, the Southern Emperor asked curiously, "Principal Gu, what is this?" Lin Heifei was also curious about what this bracelet was. Gu Qijue walked to the bracelet and pointed his hand. Then this tech bracelet transformed into a stream of information and entered his mind. With a thought, these information streams left his mind and transformed back into the bracelet. After a brief demonstration to the Southern Emperor, Gu Qijue said, "The name of this product is the Infinite Combat Device. The Infinite Combat Device can collect information, organize information, and provide reference decisions. On a complex battlefield, making correct decisions is not an easy task. With the Infinite Combat Device, more accurate judgments can be made most of the time." The Southern Emperor's eyes lit up upon hearing this. Ordinary people didn't know the value of this item, but the Southern Emperor did. The Southern Emperor immediately said, "Let me see." Upon hearing this, Gu Qijue handed the Infinite Combat Device to Lin Heifei. Lin Heifei then passed the Infinite Combat Device to a guard, who presented it to the Southern Emperor. The Southern Emperor took the Infinite Combat Device and began to inspect it carefully. After a thorough inspection, confirming there were no issues, she began to try it out. Then the Southern Emperor's expression became somewhat grim. Many places in Amethyst Star City were actually undefended against the Infinite Combat Device. Of course, this also proved the formidable power of the Infinite Combat Device. The Southern Emperor, using the Infinite Combat Device, could collect almost 30% of the Amethyst civilization's intelligence. If used on a conventional battlefield, the infinite combat device would definitely be able to collect most of the intelligence across the entire battlefield. Even for the Southern Emperor, the performance of the infinite combat device was truly astonishing. The Southern Emperor couldn't help but ask, "So, what is the selling price of this product?" Gu Qijue extended a finger and said, 100 million E-rank energy stones. The Southern Emperor exclaimed in surprise, 100 million E-rank energy stones or D-rank energy stones? In her opinion, the value of this item was 100 million D-rank energy stones. Gu Qijue said seriously, 100 million E-rank energy stones. This item is a consumable. It needs to be replaced after 100 uses. The so-called infinite combat device was equivalent to a mini version of the infinite engine, possessing 1% of the infinite engine's capabilities in information collection and analysis. As for the other capabilities of the infinite engine, it did not possess them. Moreover, one infinite combat device would be scrapped after only 100 uses. 387, unlimited medical pods, alliance routine meeting. In the Southern Emperor's opinion, the infinite combat device was an excellent item. Even with a usage limit of 100 times, the infinite combat device could still be of great use. Know yourself, know your enemy, and you will win 100 battles. If one side knows the enemy's movements and the various conditions of the battlefield environment, then more accurate decisions can be made. The Southern Emperor was certain that the infinite combat device would shine brightly on the battlefield. Her judgment was correct, after all. The infinite combat device was a miniature version of the infinite engine, possessing 1% of the infinite engine's intelligence gathering and analysis capabilities. Gu Qijue's success on the battlefield was undoubtedly greatly aided by the infinite engine. After examining the infinite combat device, the Southern Emperor looked at Gu Qijue and asked, "Principal Gu, what is the Infinite Empire's other product?" Gu Qijue opened another spatial device and immediately, a medical pod appeared before the Southern Emperor and Lin Heifei. Medical pods were nothing new, every star cluster level civilization had them. Gu Qijue introduced, "This is the Infinite Medical Pod. It can rapidly heal almost all injuries of D-rank cosmic level warriors and warriors below D-rank. If the Amethyst civilization currently has seriously injured personnel, this device can be used for treatment." The Southern Emperor nodded. "Good, Chief Steward Lin, please make the arrangements." Lin Heifei bowed, "As you command." Before long, 5 severely injured personnel who were awaiting rescue were brought over. Gu Qijue wasted no words, activated the infinite medical pod, and had an E-rank warrior enter the medical pod. This E-rank warrior's legs were gone, and the severed areas were charred black. After the Imperial Palace guards placed him inside, Gu Qijue immediately activated the infinite medical pod. Subsequently, this dying, critically injured E-rank warrior was rapidly healed. His damaged organs and tissues quickly recovered, and his severed limbs also underwent rebirth at this time. Approximately 2 minutes later, the E-rank warrior, who had almost died, emerged from the infinite medical pod full of vigor. Of course, a large amount of energy stones and materials were consumed to treat him. In short, this was a life-saving method with astonishing therapeutic effects but extremely high treatment costs. Next, Gu Qijue continued to demonstrate for the Southern Emperor. After he used the infinite medical pod to treat all 5 injured individuals, the Southern Emperor's beautiful eyes couldn't help but flash with brilliant radiance. The Southern Emperor joyfully said, "Good. The technology products from the Infinite Empire truly bring surprises. This Emperor has decided to procure 3 products from the Infinite Empire long-term: D-rank Infinite Armor, the Infinite Combat Device, and the Infinite Medical Pod." The Amethyst civilization was wealthy and didn't care about energy consumption. Moreover, if these resources and energy weren't used to arm themselves, were they to be used for reparations? Gu Qijue was very satisfied with this meeting with the Southern Emperor. After the Southern Emperor's nod, he would have a continuous flow of substantial research funds. The more resources he had, the more he could accomplish. Gu Qijue left the Southern Emperor's palace and returned directly to the Interstellar War Academy. Here, there were the best hardware conditions, the best instructors, the best training programs, and the most talented students. Therefore, every student who graduated from the Interstellar War Academy was an elite among elites. However, they had to study here for 4 years before officially graduating. So, just how powerful the elites trained by the Interstellar War Academy would be on the battlefield would only be known 4 years later. Upon arriving at the principal's office, Gu Qijue released the Infinite Combat Device and the Infinite Medical Pod for sale in the Star Cluster Alliance communication channel. As expected, after the detailed information about these two products was publicly released, they immediately attracted the attention of everyone in the Star Cluster Alliance. Many people wanted to buy them, while many others wanted to imitate them. Unlike the D-rank Infinite Armor, the Infinite Medical Pod was successfully replicated by others. However, the selling price of the Infinite Medical Pod was 10 billion E-rank energy stones, which is 100 million D-rank energy stone. The cost for others to replicate the Infinite Medical Pod was around 50 billion E-rank energy stones. This, of course, made it unfeasible. Even with further optimization of the design and cost reduction, it was almost impossible to achieve something that cost 50 billion for only 10 billion. The Infinite Combat Device and the Infinite Medical Pod quickly became bestsellers upon release. Over 80 Star Cluster civilizations in the Star Cluster Alliance were frantically placing orders. At the same time, the routine general meeting of the Star Cluster Alliance was convened once again. Such meetings were held once every half-month, totaling 24 times a year. The leaders of numerous Star Cluster-level powers connected to the conference channel. Soon, holographic projections of over 80 leaders appeared in a virtual conference room. The meeting was still presided over by the god of brightness of the Silver Flame civilization. The high-level structure of the Star Cluster Alliance remained unchanged. The Alliance leader was still the god of brightness of the Silver Flame civilization, and the 2 vice leaders and 8 directors also remained unchanged. However, some new faces had appeared in the Star Cluster Alliance. For example, the Amethyst civilization, although not sending the 4 emperors to attend the meeting, sent their supreme commander of the operations department to participate in this meeting. Of course, some familiar faces that had appeared before had also disappeared. As the war continued, it was clear that some Star Cluster-level civilizations with insufficient strength had followed in the footsteps of the Huenlin Star Cluster. After everyone had arrived, the god of brightness spoke. At this meeting, can anyone analyze the current war situation for everyone present? This analysis was not easy to conduct. After all, the battlefield was too vast, with hundreds of thousands of battles occurring non-stop. Moreover, most of the heads of Star Cluster-level civilizations were either overwhelmingly powerful in combat or were decision-making talents. They either waited for others to analyze and then made the final decision, or they supervised the implementation after others had analyzed and made the decision. If Gu Qijue weren't here, the god of brightness would probably have to analyze it himself or skip this question. Seeing that no one else spoke, Gu Qijue immediately said, "The current war between the Star Cluster Alliance and the Klein people is in a disadvantaged position. The Klein people still have a 55% chance of winning, while the Star Cluster Alliance only has a 45% chance of winning. However, with the Amethyst civilization entering the fray, a large amount of resources has flowed into the Star Cluster Alliance, and the resources of various members of the Star Cluster Alliance have also begun to integrate rapidly. The comprehensive strength of the Star Cluster Alliance is also continuously improving during this process. In the short term, although the Star Cluster Alliance cannot completely defeat the Klein people, as long as they unite sincerely and stand together against external threats, they can temporarily maintain the current situation. However, if a decisive major battle can be fought, the Star Cluster Alliance would undoubtedly gain more initiative." Gu Qijue's last sentence interested everyone. Everyone wanted to know what kind of decisive major battle he was referring to. 388, a key battle proposal, President Gu's debate. The Bright Emperor looked at Gu Qijue and asked in a calm tone, "What kind of critical war is Chief Gu referring to?" This was a question that not only the Bright Emperor but everyone else present also wanted answered. After the Bright Emperor asked, the gazes of the other Star Cluster civilization leaders turned toward Gu Qijue. Gu Qijue did not keep them in suspense but continued. "Currently, the largest battlefield between the Klein people and the Star Cluster Alliance, and also the one with the most strategic value, is the Amethyst battlefield. On this battlefield, the Klein people have deployed 1/5 of their combat forces. If we can eliminate these Klein people warriors, it will be a severe blow to the Klein people. According to the agreement between the Amethyst civilization and the Star Cluster Alliance, the Star Cluster Alliance can independently mine resources after occupying the Klein people's occupied territories. Fighting the Klein people here can both severely damage them and allow us to gain massive resources after the war. During the engagement, we can receive supplies from the Amethyst civilization. In short, this battlefield is the most advantageous for us and the most disadvantageous for the Klein people. I propose that the Star Cluster Alliance should engage the Klein people in a major war on the Amethyst battlefield. After Gu Qijue finished speaking, he waited for the God of Brightness and the other Star Cluster Alliance members to state their positions. Everyone present was aware of the situation on the Amethyst battlefield. Thus, they knew that Gu Qijue wasn't talking nonsense. The actual situation was largely as he described. However, deciding whether or not to wage a major war on the Amethyst battlefield was difficult. At this moment, everyone had two calculations to make. The first calculation, should this campaign be undertaken? The second calculation, can we win? Both of these questions were extremely difficult to answer. Currently, the over 80 Star Cluster level members of the Star Cluster Alliance are continuously gaining benefits in the Amethyst star realm. If they maintain the status quo, they will continue to receive these benefits. Once war breaks out, their existing interests will be damaged. After the war begins, whether they can defeat the Klein people is still uncertain. If they lose, all parties in the Star Cluster Alliance will suffer extremely heavy losses. If they win, will the Amethyst civilization still allow everyone to mine resources in the Amethyst star realm? In short, Gu Qijue's proposal was excellent, but it was fraught with too many uncertainties. After careful consideration, the God of Brightness said frankly, "Chief Gu, do you truly believe this battle is necessary?" Gu Qijue knew the real reason why the God of Brightness and the others were hesitating. For politicians, interests are always prioritized above all else, regardless of the time. After the God of Brightness asked, Gu Qijue spoke seriously again. Addressing everyone, the consumption caused by fighting the Klein people is immense for all members of the Star Cluster Alliance. Every day, even every minute, all parties must bear enormous expenses. If it were only the loss of energy stones and other resources, many powers might be able to accept it. But don't forget, the Klein people have already carried out multiple Star Cluster sudden death operations. The Huenlin Star Cluster and several other star clusters were turned into ruins by the Klein people's sudden sneak attacks. Gu Qijue stopped there, waiting for everyone's reaction instead of continuing. Everyone was currently continuously gaining benefits in the Amethyst star realm. However, fighting the Klein people causes massive resource depletion, and every Star Cluster level civilization is basically operating at a deficit. If it were just losing a little money, that would be one thing. But the key is that the Klein people want not only their money, but also their lives. Should they seize this opportunity to strike a blow and heavily damage the Klein people? At this point, it seemed there was no need for further deliberation. After all, no one could guarantee that they wouldn't be the next Huenlin star cluster. The God of Brightness understood that this issue did not need further discussion. He immediately looked at the leaders of the many star cluster civilizations and said, "Regarding the question of whether to conduct operations in the Amethyst star realm, let's vote." After the God of Brightness finished speaking, everyone began to vote. The voting results quickly came out. Out of the 86 votes in the Star Cluster Alliance, 40 were in favor, 22 were against, and 24 were abstentions. This result was somewhat unexpected. Only 40 Star Cluster civilizations were willing to engage in this major war. The remaining people either opposed or abstained. Nevertheless, the voting result was ultimately positive. The Star Cluster Alliance would soon wage a major war in the Amethyst star realm, since the question of whether to fight had been resolved. The next step was to solve the question of whether they could win. The God of Brightness and the others could only turn their attention back to Gu Qijue. The God of Brightness also asked, "Chief Gu, can we win the battle in the Amethyst star realm?" Gu Qijue's answer was very straightforward, "I don't know." This was certainly not the answer everyone wanted, but it was reasonable. After all, before this, the Star Cluster Alliance and the Klein people had never engaged in a war of this magnitude. So the God of Brightness immediately changed the question. In Chief Gu's view, how should the Star Cluster Alliance increase its chances of victory? Gu Qijue was certainly able to answer this question. He said without hesitation, "First, all member powers of the Star Cluster Alliance must immediately prepare for war with full effort. Second, the Amethyst civilization needs to provide maximum logistical support to the Star Cluster Alliance combat forces. Third, the Infinite Empire will only charge for the materials and the consumed energy stones in manufacturing, providing all parties with the Infinite Empire's various technological products to the greatest extent possible. Fourth, All parties should fight with the determination to fight to the death and seize victory. After Gu Qijue finished these 4 points, the expressions of everyone present subtly changed. The second point he mentioned was essentially being generous with others' resources, and the Amethyst civilization might not agree. As for the third point, that was good news. Major star cluster level powers are not short on materials. Exchanging materials and a small amount of energy stones for the Infinite Empire's technological products is definitely a massive profit. Moreover, since the Infinite Empire had made such a statement, the Amethyst civilization should also show its commitment when the Star Cluster Alliance operates in the Amethyst star realm. After repelling the Klein people, the Amethyst civilization could temporarily breathe a sigh of relief and wouldn't have to worry about the Klein people invading the Amethyst Star City and massacring the citizens of the Amethyst civilization. Wulumi, the supreme commander of the Amethyst civilization's combat department, was the first to state his position right after Gu Qijue finished speaking. The requirements mentioned by Chief Gu can be met by the Amethyst civilization. As the saying goes, the Amethyst civilization lacks everything except money. The high-level officials of the Amethyst civilization had always been trying to find a way to drive away the Klein people surrounding the Amethyst Star City. If this goal could be achieved, the Amethyst civilization would once again return to a state of security. In this process, it was certainly no problem for the Amethyst civilization to provide logistical guarantees for the Star Cluster Alliance. It was just a matter of spending money. After all, 389, a coalition of offense and defense is formed. The Four Emperors Conference. This meeting of the Star Cluster Alliance decided a very important matter. The more than 80 members of the Star Cluster Alliance will soon launch a major war against the Klein people of the Amethyst Star Realm. This is the largest battle since many Star Cluster-level civilizations began warring with the Klein people. After the meeting, the heads of the various Star Cluster civilizations began to deploy for this great war. As this great war was about to break out, Gu Qijue once again received an invitation from the Southern Emperor. This made Gu Qijue somewhat curious, wondering what the Southern Emperor wanted from him. Amethyst Star City, Southern Emperor's Palace. Main Hall. The Southern Emperor still sat upright on the enormous imperial throne suspended in midair, her exquisite and cold face as unsmiling as ever. After Gu Qijue entered the main hall, the Southern Emperor spoke of something that quite surprised him. Amethyst Star City can lend you an empty plot of land during wartime to house Heavy Cold Star. The Amethyst civilization had clearly conducted some research on Gu Qijue, this extremely important partner, so they knew that the Infinite Empire was different from all other Star Cluster-level civilizations. The core of the Infinite Empire was only one heavy cold star. One could say, wherever Gu Qijue was, wherever Heavy Cold Star was, there was the Infinite Empire. The Southern Emperor proposed this matter with 2 objectives. One objective was to establish a greater friendship with the Infinite Empire. The other objective was to protect Heavy Cold Star. The defensive capabilities of Amethyst Star City were very strong. Even the Klein people could only sigh in admiration when facing Amethyst Star City. Gu Qijue truly did not expect the Southern Emperor to make such a proposal. This proposal had both advantages and disadvantages for the Infinite Empire. If Heavy Cold Star were to relocate to Amethyst Star City, the Infinite Empire would be subject to the Amethyst civilization's monitoring and coercion. All under heaven bustle for profit. All under heaven strive for profit. He was currently useful to the Amethyst civilization and the Star Cluster Alliance, so everyone greeted him with smiles. Once their common enemy was eliminated, it was very likely that the various parties would turn on each other and engage in internal strife. Gu Qijue pondered for a moment, then shook his head and said, "A large number of Infinite Empire citizens have already gathered on Huenlin Star Cluster. The administrators of the Infinite Empire and its citizens have built the Infinite Empire and Huenlin Star Cluster very well. The Infinite Empire's combat troops and administrative personnel stationed on Huenlin Star Cluster cannot leave Huenlin Star Cluster." His words, of course, were a rejection of the Southern Emperor's proposal. Upon hearing this, the Southern Emperor slightly furrowed her brows and said, "Principal Gu, you should understand that the Star Cluster Alliance is only a temporary alliance. Right?" The Southern Emperor's meaning was very clear. The Star Cluster Alliance would not exist permanently. When the Star Cluster Alliance fractured, that would be the time for a great melee among the Star Cluster civilizations. Of course, there was another possibility. The Star Cluster Alliance turning its guns to attack the Amethyst civilization. The Amethyst civilization possessed an incredible amount of resources. But the current Amethyst civilization clearly did not have the ability to protect this wealth. Perhaps it was for this reason that the Amethyst civilization hoped Gu Qijue could become their ally. Gu Qijue nodded slightly and said, "Even if the Star Cluster Alliance cannot exist forever, the Infinite Empire has ways to deal with changes." At this point, his attitude was already very clear. Normally, the Southern Emperor should have given up by now. But after a moment of silence, the Southern Emperor spoke. "The Amethyst civilization wishes to become a mutually supportive ally with the Infinite Empire. The Infinite Empire has emerging technology, and the Amethyst civilization has vast energy stones and high-grade materials. Our cooperation can facilitate mutual exchange and benefit both parties. Principal Gu, please consider it carefully again." Since the Southern Emperor had shown sincerity and was ready to discuss this matter openly, then Gu Qijue, of course, could still discuss it with the Southern Emperor. Gu Qijue pondered for a moment and said seriously, "After the war between the Star Cluster Alliance and the Klein people ends, the Amethyst civilization, with its vast resources, is very likely to become the target of all. If the Infinite Empire forms an offensive and defensive alliance with the Amethyst civilization, it will also face attacks from other members of the Star Cluster Alliance. However, as Your Majesty Empress Nan said, cooperation between the Infinite Empire and the Amethyst civilization benefits both, allowing for mutual exchange. Therefore, the Infinite Empire is willing to cooperate with the Amethyst civilization, but the method of cooperation needs to be discussed." This was not a trivial matter, and the Southern Emperor did not intend to resolve it in one go. Achieving this much progress was already sufficient. The Southern Emperor stated, "The formation of an offensive and defensive alliance between the Infinite Empire and the Amethyst civilization is a significant matter. I alone cannot fully decide. Afterward, the Amethyst civilization will hold a Four Emperors meeting to propose a plan. I hope Principal Gu can also make corresponding preparations. At our next meeting, we can finalize this matter completely." Gu Qijue nodded slightly, "No problem." The Southern Emperor then continued, "In that case, Principal Gu can go and attend to his work at the Interstellar War Academy." Gu Qijue bowed and said, "I shall take my leave." After he left, the Southern Emperor's throne disappeared with him. When the Southern Emperor reappeared, she was in a dark realm. This was a completely black world, and in this entire black world, only 4 huge amethyst crystals floated. The Southern Emperor's figure appeared in one of the amethyst crystals. Her strength also changed from SSR rank to A rank. It turned out that the Southern Emperor could only exert her terrifying SSR rank combat power while on the Imperial throne and only in the main hall of the Imperial Palace. After leaving the Southern Emperor's palace and the Imperial throne, she would reveal her true strength. The other 3 emperors in the remaining 3 crystals were even more miserable. The 3 emperors now were merely 3 clusters of informational state factors, without even a physical form. The Amethyst civilization's decline from prosperity to decay actually involved a bitter struggle. In that earth-shattering war, all 4 emperors of the Amethyst civilization died in battle. Although the Southern Emperor had now revived, her strength was only A rank. Her terrifying SSR rank strength could only be effective within the Southern Emperor's palace. As for the other 3 emperors, they couldn't even leave the Dark Realm. However, for all major and minor affairs concerning the Amethyst civilization, the Southern Emperor still had to discuss them with these 3. Upon arriving in the Dark Realm, the Southern Emperor repeated Gu Qijue's words from a short while ago to these emperors. After listening, the North Emperor spoke, "In the Great War back then, I was the luckiest, preserving almost all of my informational state factors. However, because of this, my path to recovery is the longest. But no matter what, as long as we can stall until I recover, dealing with these small fries will be as easy as turning over one's hand. In my opinion, as long as we can defend and delay, whatever plan he proposes can be agreed to. Even if he gains some benefits now, he will have to spit them all out later." 390, the Amethyst War begins, a brand new Infinite Legion. The Southern Emperor did not comment on the North Emperor's words, and the East Emperor also remained silent. But the West Emperor, one of the 4 emperors, disagreed. The West Emperor said seriously, "We can consider Gu Qijue's reasonable conditions. Unreasonable conditions, as well as conditions that pose harm to the Amethyst civilization, cannot be accepted, not even one. This Gu Qijue is no ordinary person. He is merely the head of state of a star cluster-level civilization, yet he dares to negotiate terms with the Amethyst civilization. This fully demonstrates his confidence and courage. analyzing the intelligence previously provided by the Southern Emperor. Gu Qijue and the Infinite Empire are also not simple. Gu Qijue definitely holds secrets that even we are unaware of. We can cooperate with him, but we must maintain sufficient caution. The four emperors of the Amethyst civilization each had different personalities. The East Emperor was taciturn and deeply calculating. The West Emperor was meticulous and capable of decisive planning. The Southern Emperor was indecisive and lacked initiative. The North Emperor was arrogant and conceited. After the West Emperor spoke, the East Emperor, the leader of the four emperors, said, "Proceed according to the West Emperor's suggestion." As soon as he spoke, the matter was completely settled. However, the East Emperor added, "The Amethyst civilization can accept requests that are not overly excessive. The North Emperor's idea is not entirely wrong. What we need most right now is time. As long as we can stall until our successful recovery, the Amethyst civilization will once again become the ruler of the sacred Mark universe." The Southern Emperor noted the East Emperor's words and then departed. On the other side, Gu Qijue, like other star cluster-level forces, was also preparing for war. The Blackstone Legion, which had followed him in conquering the North and South and achieving glorious military feats, also received a familiar yet specially significant name. From now on, there would be no more Blackstone Legion, only the completely renewed Infinite Legion. The Infinite Legion's combat troops were rapidly expanded to 100 million personnel. Their weaponry, equipment, and the starships they used were all completely updated. The current Infinite Legion possesses 10,000 interstellar battleships. Furthermore, the warriors of the Infinite Legion are rapidly being equipped with D-rank infinite armor. This means that warriors equipped with D-rank infinite armor can already be used as D-rank cosmic-level warriors on the battlefield. At this time, all parties in the Star Cluster Alliance placed large orders with the Infinite Empire. Although Gu Qijue accepted all orders, he always prioritized supplying the Infinite Empire, followed by the Amethyst civilization. After that, the supply of weaponry and equipment was based on the degree of closeness. Only at this point did many star cluster civilizations realize that maintaining good relations with the Infinite Empire was such an important matter. The Hu star cluster side was overjoyed. They had always maintained a deep friendship with the Infinite Empire and received care from the Infinite Empire this time as well. The worst off was the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster. Gu Qijue's Infinite Empire originated from the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster. Logically, the relationship between Gu Qijue and the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster should have been the best. Unfortunately, the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster betrayed Gu Qijue during his most crucial early decisions. This resulted in the current relationship between the Infinite Empire and the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster being mediocre. Of course, Gu Qijue and Han Sen's personal relationship was very good. Even Han Yiming, one of the vice heads of state of the Infinite Empire, is the legitimate son of Han Sen's family. Therefore, Han Sen received aid in the form of a large amount of weaponry, equipment, and technological products from the Infinite Empire. To carry out this great war, the Star Cluster Alliance prepared for a full 30 days. During this process, the Offensive and Defensive Alliance Agreement between Gu Qijue and the Amethyst civilization was also signed. After the Star Cluster Alliances, combat forces were ready. The Great War against the Klein people officially commenced. The intense war preparations by all parties in the Star Cluster Alliance naturally could not be hidden from the Klein people. The Klein people had long since made thorough preparations, awaiting the Star Cluster Alliance's offensive. The combined forces of the Star Cluster Alliance were certainly not bluffing this time. After all parties had made ample preparations, the Great War erupted completely. The battlefield for this Great War between the two sides was around Amethyst Star City in the Amethyst Star Realm. After the war broke out, a large number of citizens of the Amethyst civilization rushed to the various city towers of Amethyst Star City to watch. For the citizens of the Amethyst civilization, such a spectacle was absolutely novel. As one of the members of the Star Cluster Alliance, Gu Qijue personally led the Infinite Empire into battle this time. On the communication channels of the Amethyst civilization and the Star Cluster civilizations, the attention of many people naturally fell upon the Infinite Legion. There was no helping it. The Infinite Legion's weaponry and equipment were the most advanced on the entire battlefield. Every warrior of the Infinite Legion was armed to the teeth. Moreover, the Infinite Legion was the only legion that had managed to equip all its members with D-rank infinite armor. All parties wanted to see what kind of performance the Infinite Legion, possessing such weaponry and equipment, would display on the battlefield. Gu Qijue did not disappoint the masses. After the Great War commenced, Gu Qijue led 100 million Infinite Legion troops in a charge. Kill, outside a Klein people's stronghold. Gu Qijue took the lead, guiding 100 million Infinite Legion warriors to charge toward the stronghold. The 100 million Infinite Legion warriors were vast and mighty, blotting out the sky and covering the sun. Their end nowhere in sight. However, the Klein people were not intimidated in the slightest. Facing the Infinite Legion's charge, they did not shrink back but chose to meet them head-on. Countless Klein people, in droves, continuously emerged from various parts of the Klein people territory at this moment. Their numbers were, surprisingly, equal to or greater than the Infinite Legion's forces. The Infinite Legion warriors, clad in black armor, descended from the sky like a black ocean, crushing down upon the Klein people. The green-skinned, purple-skinned, blood-red-skinned, and brown-skinned Klein people also turned into an ocean, wildly colliding with the Infinite Legion. In the 17th century, there was a tactic called the line infantry square formation. This involved both combat forces lining up and standing in formation without any cover after entering range, firing at each other. This tactic was also jokingly referred to as the queue up and get shot tactic. A similar scene occurred between the Infinite Legion and the Klein people forces at this moment. The only difference was that neither side used ordinary firearms, but rather various laser cannons, floating cannons, clustered particle cannons, and various dark matter cruise missiles to bombard the opposing side wildly. Boom, 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 boom. As soon as the two sides made contact, a terrifying, earth-shattering great war immediately erupted. Suddenly, everything above and below, as far as the eye could see, was covered by various long-range firepower weapons. A scene that stunned countless people also occurred at this moment. Only a heaven-shaking dragon roar was heard, and immediately afterward, Gu Qijue, the head of the Infinite Empire, attacked in his second combat form. The countless artillery and attacks of the Klein people seemed like mere passing clouds to him. His mighty, vast, and boundless energy formed an impenetrable shield on his body surface. He charged straight through, holding his blood spear, and plunged into the Klein people's massive army. In an instant, he killed anyone who blocked him and even Buddhas who blocked him, proving unstoppable. 391, they're all watching each other closely. Conflicts erupt at the Alliance meeting. This war was unprecedented in scale, something never seen before it began. No one could have imagined how intense and terrifying this battle would be. Gu Qijue and the Infinite Legion were well equipped, armed to the teeth. Therefore, they performed outstandingly on the battlefield, practically dominating the Klein people. Other star cluster-level civilizations had limited combat capabilities. Not long after the fighting started, the casualty rate for the combat units of many star cluster-level civilizations had already exceeded 10%. This was absolutely terrifying. One must realize that the two sides had only just engaged, yet they had already suffered such massive casualties. Amethyst Star City, Southern Emperor Palace. The Southern Emperor, one of the 4 emperors of Amethyst civilization, was seriously monitoring the battlefield situation. Lin Heifei, the chief steward of the Southern Emperor Palace, was also in the main palace hall, observing the holographic battlefield not far away. From the throne suspended high in the air, the Southern Emperor spoke in a cool, clear voice. How is it that some star cluster-level civilizations have such poor combat capabilities? The Southern Emperor's words were relatively polite. If she were to speak more bluntly, it would be that some star cluster-level civilizations seem to have no combat ability whatsoever. The combat units of these star clusters were almost instantly routed when facing the Klein people legions. The Southern Emperor felt that there was truly no need to guarantee logistics for such combat units. Hearing this, Lin Heifei gave a wry smile. Your Majesty Empress Nan, there are various reasons why these star cluster-level civilizations are not strong in combat. Generally speaking, there are a few main reasons. First, some star cluster alliances did not send their main forces. Second, some star cluster-level civilizations inherently have relatively weak combat capabilities. However, in my opinion, the most common reason is that these people are holding back their effort. Many combat units are maintaining a wait-and-see attitude. Aside from the Infinite Empire, the combat units of other star cluster-level civilizations are still holding back to a great extent. Your Majesty Empress Nan, choosing Chief Gu as the Amethyst civilization's ally was absolutely correct. Other star cluster civilizations, even the Silver Flame civilization, are merely a bunch of short-sighted mediocrities. After listening to Lin Heifei, the The Southern Emperor nodded slightly and focused her gaze primarily on the direction where Gu Qijue was located. Under Gu Qijue's leadership, the Infinite Legion began a swift charge. On the Amethyst Star Realm battlefield, Gu Qijue and his Infinite Legion seemed to have become the nightmare of the Klein people. They fought across the area, charging continuously, and the warriors of the Klein people were constantly being eliminated by them. At the same time, Gu Qijue continued to lead the Infinite Legion in a rapid charge across the battlefield. However, he gradually realized something was wrong. Most people in the Star Cluster Alliance had ulterior motives. It was like the 18 lords campaigning against Dong Zhuo. Most were there just to drink, and only a few were willing to actually do something. While allowing the warriors of the Infinite Legion to continue charging and breaking through enemy lines, Gu Qijue began observing his surroundings. After watching for a moment, he grew quite angry and he couldn't help but curse inwardly. These useless, good-for-nothing scoundrels. When Gu Qijue stopped, Han Yiming, the deputy commander of the Infinite Legion, flew through the air to his vicinity. Han Yiming spoke bluntly, "This cannot continue. A war of this magnitude requires everyone to contribute. No matter how strong the Infinite Legion is, we cannot determine the outcome of the battle on a battlefield of this scale." Gu Qijue naturally understood that Han Yiming was right, but he still said, "That is true. But all parties are being extremely cautious. Even if we demand that they go all out, these star cluster-level civilizations will definitely comply in public but defy in private." Han Yiming nodded upon hearing this. This is troublesome. If everyone wants to wait and see, and everyone wants to preserve their strength, something unexpected might happen. Gu Qijue agreed with Han Yiming's viewpoint and stated plainly, "I think so too. Whether it's useful or not, I will convey our thoughts to the others." Saying this, Gu Qijue entered the Star Cluster Alliance's conference channel. Most of the other chiefs of the Star Cluster Alliance were in the conference channel. Seeing Chief Gu suddenly access the conference channel, many people knew exactly what he was going to do. Nevertheless, one chief spoke up, feigning ignorance. "Chief Gu, is something the matter?" Gu Qijue had no intention of beating around the bush and went straight to the point. "I'm here to tell everyone that I hope you stop maintaining this wait-and-see attitude. The longer the war drags on, the greater the chance of unexpected changes occurring. If you all continue to maintain a wait-and-see attitude, hoping to preserve as much of your strength as possible, the Infinite Legion will, if necessary, withdraw directly to Amethyst Star City for rest and reorganization." Gu Qijue's words made many chiefs very unhappy. Chief Moling of the Gray Fog Star Cluster revealed a half-smile expression. This was an alien with a pair of bighorn sheep horns on its head, and its smile was rather unnerving. It chuckled for a moment and then said blandly, "Chief Gu, may I interpret that as you threatening us?" Gu Qijue, of course, was merely stating the facts. What everyone was doing now was definitely problematic. If Chief Moling had spoken properly, Gu Qijue naturally could have communicated nicely with it. Since the other party chose to speak in such a sarcastic, yin and yang tone, Gu Qijue certainly wouldn't show it any respect. He said impolitely, "So what if I am?" The atmosphere in the holographic conference room instantly became somewhat heavy. Although Chief Moling knew that the Infinite Empire was very powerful and that Gu Qijue's strength was not weak. Since Gu Qijue had spoken like this, it certainly couldn't back down. Chief Moling stood up immediately and said, "Chief Gu, since you have such a strong opinion of this chief, do you want to spar with me?" Gu Qijue did not slam the table and rise, nor did he say anything like he wouldn't be a hero if he feared him. He merely raised his eyelids, glanced at Chief Moling with extreme disdain, and calmly stated, "You are not worthy." Chief Moling had a fiery temper and Gu Qijue's words completely enraged him, but before he could utter any threats, the god of brightness of the Silver Flame Superstar Cluster Civilization spoke lightly, "Chief Moling, sit down. Ultimately, our current enemy is still the Klein people. As for our other internal contradictions, let us set them aside for now. After the Klein people are eliminated, there will be no issue with how you wish to settle things." Hearing this, Chief Moling snorted coldly and immediately exited the holographic conference room. Not only Chief Moling, but several other chiefs who had issues with Gu Qijue also chose to exit the holographic conference room. Only when no one else was leaving did the god of brightness speak to Chief Gu. "Chief Gu, I can understand your feelings. However, it is understandable that all parties are being cautious, as this is the first time they have participated in a war of this scale. Of course, when necessary, I will issue an order as the Alliance leader to urge them on." 392. The Vermilion Bird Star Cluster has fallen. Refugees are migrating. The God of Brightness is the strongest individual in the Star Cluster Alliance and also the Alliance head. On the surface, he holds high power and prestige, making him greatly admired and envied by many. In reality, ever since becoming the head of the Star Cluster Alliance, the God of Brightness has constantly suffered from headaches. Gu Qijue only attends the Star Cluster Alliance meetings during crucial times. Therefore, he knows relatively little about what happens in the Star Cluster Alliance meetings. The God of Brightness, as the Alliance head, must attend every meeting. Most of the time, the Star Cluster Alliance meetings are far from harmonious. Minor, inconsequential issues are fine, but as soon as fundamental interests are involved, all parties start pulling unexpected stunts. Many times, the God of Brightness wished he could just punch some of the troublemakers to death, but there was no choice. As the Alliance head, his mission was to maintain the Alliance and make it unbreakable. Whenever he encountered this situation in the past, he could only play the mediator. Just like today, he had to comfort Premier Moling while also comforting Gu Qijue. He had to give both sides sufficient face and let both parties cool down. Gu Qijue felt indifferent about the departure of Premier Moling and the others. He immediately continued the previous topic. The Klein people are not using their full strength right now. I don't need to say it for everyone to understand. There are only two possibilities for why the Klein people are doing this. One possibility is that we haven't gone all out either, and the Klein people are still observing and waiting. The other possibility is that this is a delaying tactic by the Klein people. Perhaps the Klein people are taking some action in a place we cannot see. As soon as Gu Qijue said this, the expressions of those who had been dismissive changed slightly. The Klein people are not their sons, they won't obey every command. They couldn't expect the Klein people to obediently fight them in the Amethyst Star Realm just because they wanted a battle there. If Gu Qijue was actually right, the situation would become extremely troublesome. The God of Brightness looked at Gu Qijue and asked seriously, "Chief Gu, is this your speculation, or has the Infinite Empire detected special intelligence?" At this moment, the gazes of all the premiers simultaneously fell upon Gu Qijue. They all wanted to know whether this was Gu Qijue's speculation or something else. Gu Qijue did not lie and stated frankly, "It is merely speculation." Hearing that this was only Gu Qijue's speculation, the God of Brightness and the other star cluster-level civilization premiers all heaved a sigh of relief. If it was only Gu Qijue's speculation, then everything was fine. Unexpectedly, right at this moment, the expressions of more than a dozen premiers suddenly changed. Then, Premier Moling and the others who had left shortly before returned shamefacedly, their expressions grim. Although the God of Brightness didn't know what was happening, he knew something had gone wrong. The God of Brightness immediately asked, "What happened?" Gabriel, the premier of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, spoke first. "The Vermilion Bird Star Cluster has fallen. I assume the situation is similar for the other star clusters." Gabriel's true body was in the Amethyst Star Realm, so he remained very calm. After him, the others spoke up one after another. Gu Qijue made a rough tally and discovered that nearly 30 star clusters had been attacked by the Klein people. More than 10 star clusters had already rapidly fallen. The Klein people in the Amethyst Star Realm delaying the various combat forces here indeed had a special motive. For this major war, the major star cluster-level civilizations had deployed at least 1/3, perhaps even half, of their military strength. This resulted in a severe weakening of everyone's defensive capabilities in the rear. If the Klein people in the Amethyst Star Realm were in danger and facing collapse, the Klein people might have had to split their forces to rescue them. However, the members of the Star Cluster Alliance were all watching each other, hoping to conserve their strength. Since the Klein people in the Amethyst Star Realm were in an excellent position, the other Klein people could naturally fight without restraint. Premier Qijue, who had left with Premier Moling shortly before, asked with difficulty, "What do we do now?" As he spoke, he looked at the God of Brightness, then at Gu Qijue, and finally at Wulumi, the supreme commander of the Amethyst Civilization's combat department. Seeing Premier Qijue's gaze, Wulumi laughed loudly and said, "Didn't you all disagree with Chief Gu's opinion before? Since you are so opinionated, why don't you just make up your own minds?" Hearing this, Premier Qijue felt extreme resentment, but he couldn't afford to offend even the Silver Flame Superstar Cluster civilization, let alone the group's god of wealth. Faced with Wulumi's words, he could only respond with silence. Seeing Premier Qijue's lack of response, Wulumi immediately said, "The Amethyst civilization can provide logistical assistance to all parties, but as for other matters, the Amethyst civilization is powerless." Wulumi's meaning was crystal clear. The Amethyst civilization was only responsible for funding, everything else had nothing to do with them. After Wulumi made his statement, the god of brightness saw that Gu Qijue remained silent and had no choice but to speak up. Regarding this sudden development, this alliance head also temporarily lacks a good solution. How do you all think we should resolve this? Although the god of brightness was seemingly asking everyone, he was actually asking Gu Qijue. Since Gu Qijue had already said that their actions would likely lead to trouble, then Gu Qijue must have seriously considered how to respond if something went wrong. After the god of brightness spoke, Gu Qijue indeed replied, I plan to leave 50 million Infinite Legion soldiers on the Amethyst battlefield to continue the fight. I plan to take the remaining 50 million Infinite Legion soldiers to the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster for rescue operations. After speaking, Gu Qijue's holographic projection vanished from the holographic conference room. As soon as he left, the pressure immediately shifted onto Premier Moling. If he hadn't messed things up earlier, everyone wouldn't have ended up offending Gu Qijue. The Infinite Legion has extremely strong combat power and is the main force on the Amethyst Star Realm battlefield. Once the Infinite Legion withdrew half of its soldiers, everyone else would have to bear significantly heavier pressure. After Gu Qijue left, the Star Cluster level civilization premiers who hadn't been online received the news and logged in one after another. They then found that the atmosphere in the holographic conference room was rather strange. After a brief inquiry, everyone realized what had happened. For a moment, many people exchanged bewildered glances. Facts proved that Gu Qijue was definitely a man of his word. When he said he would take away half of the combat forces, he took away half of the combat forces without any hesitation. 50 million Infinite Legion soldiers quickly evacuated the battlefield and boarded their starships. Before long, 5,000 Infinite Legion star battleships left the Amethyst Star Realm and began their spatial jump. A long time ago, Gu Qijue had made an agreement with Vice Premier Hansen. That was, once the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster fell, he would provide aid to the greatest extent possible. Although a long time had passed since then, since the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster was in trouble, he was still willing to go and rescue the people. All the rescued people would simply be sent to the Huenlin Star Cluster to pioneer and develop it. 393. Black Swan takes flight, Infinite Empire reinforcements arrive. The sudden appearance of the Klein people at the headquarters of the major star cluster civilizations caused many star cluster civilizations to panic. Even though they knew the Klein people were likely employing the strategy of besieging Wei to rescue Zhao. But knowing was one thing, the main combat forces of the various star cluster civilizations still did not dare to remain in the Amethyst Star Realm to participate in joint operations. It was just that their decision to retreat at this moment was undoubtedly too late. Although these combat forces were the main strength of their respective star clusters, they still had a huge gap compared to the Infinite Legion under Gu Qijue. They had not retreated at the optimal time, nor did they possess the breakthrough capability of the Infinite Legion. This resulted in everyone being unable to leave when they wanted to. The Klein people, who had previously fought relatively conservatively, began launching a full-scale offensive at this moment. Terrifying battles erupted across the skies and grounds of the Amethyst Star Realm and in all areas near the Amethyst Star Realm, excluding the region covered by Amethyst Star City. Under these circumstances, let alone retreating from the Amethyst Star Realm, it was extremely difficult for everyone to survive for even a little longer on the Amethyst Star Realm battlefield. On the Amethyst battlefield, everyone's situation was not good. At the headquarters of the major star cluster level civilizations, the situations of many star cluster civilizations had reached a precarious point. The heads of the various Star Cluster Alliance members understood that many of them had made strategic errors this time. If their enemy had not been the Klein people, their decisions would have been fine. Acting that way would have allowed them to maximize the attrition of their competitors' effective forces while preserving their own strength to the greatest extent. Unfortunately, their opponent this time was far more terrifying than any they had faced before. After realizing their intentions on the Amethyst battlefield, the Klein people surprisingly launched a surprise attack on everyone's rear, catching them completely off guard. If they had gone all out from the start, like the Infinite Legion, and put immense pressure on the Klein people, then the Klein people would have only been able to dispatch reinforcements into the Amethyst battlefield instead of attacking their headquarters. However, in this world, there are only consequences and results. There is no such thing as if. In the Star Cluster Alliance conference channel, The heads of the major star cluster civilizations were basically all online at this moment. The reason it was basically all was that Gu Qijue, the head of the Infinite Empire, was absent. After entering the conference channel, everyone could only look towards the supreme leader of the Star Cluster Alliance, the god of brightness of the Silver Flame Super Star Cluster Civilization. The god of brightness understood the meaning in their eyes, but understanding was one thing, he still had no good solution. But since he was the Star Cluster Alliance leader, even if he had no solution now, he still had to come up with one. The finger of the god of brightness's holographic projection tapped on the table, and then he spoke. The battle on the Amethyst battlefield has entered a white-hot phase. At this stage, the combat forces of the major star cluster civilizations cannot retreat, nor should they retreat. If they retreat now, they will surely be pursued and slaughtered by the Klein people. Not only must we not retreat, but we must also stand firm and fight to the death. Losses to the headquarters of the major star cluster civilizations are unavoidable. In this great war in the Amethyst star realm, we must win, and we must not lose. After the god of brightness finished speaking, although the expressions of many star cluster civilization heads were grim, they could only nod. Without a doubt, everything the god of brightness said was correct. After everyone took a moment to digest this, the god of brightness continued. That's enough about the Amethyst battlefield for now. Let's discuss the headquarters of the major star cluster civilizations. According to the latest information received, approximately 30 star cluster civilizations have been attacked this time. I order, in the name of the Star Cluster Alliance leader, that all other unaffected members provide maximum assistance to these 30 star cluster civilizations. Furthermore, the attacked star cluster civilizations must demonstrate the utmost resolve and courage, saving themselves at all costs. Moving forward, all reinforcements that can be dispatched by various parties must be reported to me. I, the Alliance leader, will also constantly monitor the situation of all attacked star cluster civilizations. As long as there is a sliver of hope, I, the Alliance leader, and the rest of the Star Cluster Alliance members will put forth every effort to provide assistance to all parties. The Silver Flame Super Star Cluster Civilization, as the only Super Star Cluster civilization in the Star Cluster Alliance, will also proactively shoulder greater responsibility during this disaster. I can solemnly promise everyone here that the Silver Flame Super Star Cluster will dispatch 100 billion warriors from the Silver Flame combat forces to participate in the rescue. The words of the God of Brightness allowed everyone to breathe a slight sigh of relief. Although the God of Brightness usually played mediator and rarely made major decisions on his own, but facts proved that as the supreme leader of the Star Cluster Alliance, one could mediate and coast, but one could not truly be incompetent. Just like this time, when faced with this sudden crisis, the God of Brightness demonstrated his capability to everyone. While the members of the Star Cluster Alliance were holding their meeting, Gu Qijue had already brought half of the Infinite Legion's combat forces near the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster. The people of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster were despairing. They had originally thought that since the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster had fought the Klein people for so long, the situation there had stabilized. But no one expected that a Black Swan event, though rare, was possible. When a Black Swan event occurs, if adequate preparations are not made, a truly terrifying catastrophe will ensue. Compared to other star cluster civilizations, the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, having been in a constant state of war, had made evacuation preparations to the greatest extent possible. Yet, the high-level officials and the populace of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster undoubtedly still underestimated the terror of the Klein people. This time, the Klein people launched an attack on the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster with the irresistible momentum of an avalanche. Facing the fierce assault of the Klein people, the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster rapidly fell at an unbelievable speed. At this moment, the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster had become a terrifying hell. Everywhere in the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, there were various aircraft fleeing in panic. Many people had no aircraft to board, nor did they possess enough power to traverse the universe themselves. They were all despairingly trapped and dying on various planets, even though they were living beings. But at a time like this, their lives were as insignificant as ants, worth nothing. Many people stood on the planetary surface, desperately looking up at the sky. There were countless aircraft in the sky, flying rapidly, escaping this terrifying abyss. But there was no space for them on those numerous aircraft. Many people had already given up struggling and were preparing to welcome death, while even more were descending into madness under the immense pressure. However, at this very moment, something happened that no one had expected. The screens of various devices on numerous planets all switched to the same image. A figure, somewhat familiar to everyone, appeared in the center of the screen. This person was heard saying, "I am Gu Qijue, the head of the Infinite Empire, a star cluster-level civilization. 50 million combat forces of the Infinite Empire are about to enter the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster to launch a rescue operation. Everyone, prepare for evacuation." 394, an elite force capable of taking on 100 enemies single-handedly, the most difficult choice. Everyone in the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster couldn't help but reveal expressions of ecstasy after hearing Gu Qijue's words. No one had expected that Gu Qijue, head of the Infinite Empire, would be willing to rush over immediately to provide aid. In the interstellar war between the Star Cluster Alliance and the Klein people, the Infinite Empire was undoubtedly one of the most beneficial parties. To some extent, this protracted campaign had elevated the Infinite Empire. Even the most ignorant citizens of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster had heard of the Infinite Empire, one of the members of the Star Cluster Alliance, and Gu Qijue, head of the Infinite Empire. At this stage, Gu Qijue and his Infinite Empire were absolutely the Star Cluster Alliance's well-deserved rising stars. The impressive combat record of the Blackstone Legion, the predecessor of the Infinite Legion, was also well known to many people. When they heard that the Infinite Legion had come to rescue them, many people who were in despair couldn't help but feel hope. Facts proved that Gu Qijue was always trustworthy. He would not disappoint those who believed in him. The Infinite Legion rushed into the frontline battlefield, where the Klein people were fighting the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster combat forces at a speed almost unimaginable to everyone. Upon seeing the Infinite Empire's banner, many of the Klein people couldn't help but feel waves of headaches. When facing other members of the Star Cluster Alliance, they usually held a massive technological advantage. The Infinite Empire was different. Its technology was either on par with theirs or even more advanced. The Klein people in this area did not have any powerful experts, so Gu Qijue did not personally descend to the front lines to fight, but instead directed rescue operations everywhere. The combat capabilities of 50 million Infinite Legion soldiers were terrifying. Their appearance even briefly led the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster combat forces to begin a counterattack. However, the Infinite Legion could not be stationed long-term in the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, and the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster could not defend itself using its own strength. Therefore, a counterattack was not very meaningful, and the people of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster had to evacuate regardless. The ones Gu Qijue placed in the rear for rescue operations were the elite of the Infinite Empire's elites, the Golden Lion King Warriors. The Golden Lion King Warriors were extremely powerful to begin with, and after multiple upgrades and modifications using the Infinite Empire's technology, the current Golden Lion King Warriors all possess D-rank peak combat capability. In times of crisis, they can even briefly enter the C-rank cosmic level to fight. Under Gu Qijue's command, the Golden Lion King Warriors, who had been expanded to 10,000, began rescuing people everywhere. Han Sen, one of the vice heads of state of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, quickly arrived near Gu Qijue. Han Sen had always known that Gu Qijue was a promising young man, making him an early investor in Gu Qijue and the Infinite Empire behind him. But Han Sen still hadn't expected that, after Gu Qijue left the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, he would develop rapidly at an incredible speed. Like a flood dragon entering the sea or a bird soaring into the blue sky, today's Infinite Empire not only surpassed the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster in many aspects, but was even far ahead of it. Upon meeting Gu Qijue, Han Sen gratefully said, "Chief Gu, thank you to the Infinite Empire for extending a helping hand to the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster during this crisis." Gu Qijue smiled and said, "Vice Head of State Han, we are old friends, there is no need for such formalities. What is the situation like across the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster now? And how does the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster require aid from the Infinite Empire?" Seeing Gu Qijue speak this way, Han Sen actually felt relieved. He had worried that Gu Qijue had come this time to extort them. After all, the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster was not the only entity affected by the war. Given the Infinite Empire's combat and rescue capabilities, Gu Qijue could completely afford to wait for the highest bidder right now. Since Gu Qijue did not do this, Han Sen chose to tell him the truth. More than 3/5 of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster's territory has completely fallen. More than half of the citizens were unable to evacuate. Former Head of State Salisbury, Your Excellency, along with several other high-ranking officials, sacrificed themselves in the initial fighting. This news surprised Gu Qijue somewhat. Gu Qijue held little ill will toward Head of State Salisbury. Strictly speaking, Head of State Salisbury had only wronged the Infinite Empire slightly with her final decision. Other than that, he and the Infinite Empire had received much care from Head of State Salisbury. He hadn't expected that even though he had provided aid to the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster as quickly as possible, Head of State Salisbury and others had already died in battle. Gu Qijue remained silent for a moment, then looked at Han Sen and asked, "Does the Infinite Empire need to help transfer personnel now, or enter the fallen territories to rescue people?" This question was difficult to answer. As a member of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, Han Sen naturally hoped that everyone in the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster could survive. But he was not only a citizen of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, he was also the vice head of state of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster. Since the head of state of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster was not present, he was the supreme leader of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster. Therefore, he alone had to make this difficult decision and bear full responsibility. After careful consideration, Han Sen said, "I have decided to prioritize rescuing as many people as possible. I hope the Infinite Empire can first help the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster transfer its citizens, and then conduct rescue operations for those who are trapped. If there are severe difficulties during the rescue process, please prioritize rescuing the elite population of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster." Han Sen's decision was cruel to many people in the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster. Many people failed to become elites within the population due to their own reasons, and also external reasons. Sometimes, personal reasons and external reasons might even account for half each. But fate is cruel. Regardless of the reason, since they did not become the elites of the population, they lost the opportunity to be rescued first. This was also a cruel compromise made for the continuation of civilization, because in a brand new environment, the elites of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster would have a greater competitive advantage than the common people of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster. By placing hope in them, the torch of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster's civilization would be more likely to continue burning. After Han Sen made this difficult decision, Gu Qijue solemnly stated, "The Infinite Empire will rescue the citizens of the war-torn Vermilion Bird Star Cluster to the maximum extent possible." If the Infinite Empire encountered the same problem, Gu Qijue, as the head of state, would not compromise. On one hand, the Infinite Empire has always maintained a strong sense of crisis. On the other hand, if that time truly came, Gu Qijue would rather fight desperately, seeking life from the jaws of death. Of course, Vice Premier Hansen's decision was also relatively correct, because the situations of the Infinite Empire and the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster were indeed different. After Gu Qijue and Han Sen met, the Infinite Empire's combat forces began to fully commit themselves to the rescue effort. The primary purpose of the battles they were currently engaged in was no longer to inflict casualties on the enemy, but to save lives. The Infinite Legion soldiers, armed to the teeth, could almost all fight 1 against 10 or even 1 against 100. On the battlefield, the role played by 50 million Infinite Legion soldiers on the battlefield was already comparable to 500 million, or even 5 billion. Conventional combat troops, 395. The Vermilion Bird Star Cluster has been rescued. They've moved on to other battlefields. The Vermilion Bird Star Cluster was fortunate. They had the Infinite Empire as a powerful ally. Although the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster and the Infinite Empire had some unpleasant history, both sides still maintained friendship and cooperation. Other Star Cluster civilizations were less lucky. Currently, only 30-odd Star Cluster civilizations were affected by the war. Theoretically, there were still more than 50 Star Cluster civilizations that could split their forces to rescue these Star Clusters. But this was only in theory. Some Star Clusters worried about being lured away from their base. Their main forces had already been sent to the Amethyst battlefield, and the defense capabilities of their home Star Clusters were already relatively weak. If they were to send out large numbers of combat troops to support other Star Clusters at this time, then, should the Klein people suddenly attack them, their civilizations would face the threat of destruction. Under such circumstances, apart from the Infinite Empire, no other Star Cluster civilization dared to dispatch elites for external rescue missions, let alone elites and main forces. Even regular combat troops were only sent out symbolically by the various parties. It was like when natural and man-made disasters occurred elsewhere. The thing the Dongying Ren loved to do most was send people 1,000 paper cranes. The main forces of the vast majority of star cluster civilizations were bogged down on the amethyst battlefield and unable to withdraw. Other star cluster civilizations not affected by the war were unwilling to commit to full-scale rescue efforts. As a result, some weak star cluster civilizations could only face destruction. The first star cluster civilization to perish was the Yuchen star cluster. Inside the star cluster alliance's holographic conference room, the leader of the Yuchen star cluster civilization left with a terrible expression and never logged back on. Minutes later, the news of the destruction of the Yuchen civilization became known to everyone. This incident made the leaders of many star cluster civilizations feel as if they had heard a death knell. They dared not hesitate or harbor other thoughts any longer. And one after another, they sent meeting invitations to Gu Qijue. Everyone realized that at a time like this, the most useful entities were the Infinite Empire and Gu Qijue. The Infinite Legion possessed fierce combat capability, and Gu Qijue could personally lead teams to conduct rescues. The Vermilion Bird Star Cluster had received aid from the Infinite Empire. Many of its citizens were successfully evacuated and teleported to the Huenlin Star Cluster. After receiving a large number of meeting invitations, Gu Qijue still decided to log in for the conference. His image appeared in the holographic conference room, where he saw people looking utterly distraught. Seeing the expressions on everyone's faces, Gu Qijue couldn't help but reveal a half-smile. He had already told them to abandon their fantasies and fight with all their might. When all parties merely watched each other, trouble was bound to arise easily. Unfortunately, these people had not listened before, and some had even mocked him. After entering the holographic conference room, Gu Qijue did not mock them in return. These people were short-sighted, narrow-minded, and low-class, stooping to their level would only lower his own standing. Therefore, after entering the holographic conference room, he directly asked, getting straight to the point, "How are the other star clusters faring?" Hearing this, the god of brightness stated plainly, "The Yuchen civilization has ended, and other civilizations are also precarious. The Silver Flame Superstar Cluster civilization is currently the main force responsible for rescue missions, besides the Infinite Empire. However, the star domain that the Silver Flame Superstar Cluster civilization must defend is vast, and we have also been raided by the Klein people before. Right now, the Silver Flame Superstar Cluster civilization is no longer able to send out more rescue troops." After the god of brightness finished speaking, the leaders of many star cluster civilizations began to pour out their grievances. Although they rambled on about many things, the central idea was that they were powerless to dispatch troops to support other star clusters. Gu Qijue already knew that this group of disorganized rabble would struggle to accomplish anything significant, but there was no alternative. Although the Infinite Empire was strong, the Infinite Empire alone could not resist the Klein people. Even if the Infinite Empire, the Amethyst Civilization, and the Silver Flame Civilization united, they still wouldn't be a match for the Klein people. The fact that the Star Cluster Alliance and the Klein people could currently hold their own was the result of the combined efforts of over 80 Star Cluster civilizations in the Star Cluster Alliance. After pondering for a moment, Gu Qijue spoke words that surprised and delighted everyone. After the Infinite Empire completes the rescue of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, it will continue to shift focus to other star clusters to conduct rescue missions. Now, I hope everyone in the Star Cluster Alliance can cooperate sincerely. The Star Cluster civilizations affected by the war must find ways to hold fast and rely on themselves. The other Star Cluster civilizations must provide maximum support to those Star Cluster civilizations affected by the war. The longer you hold out, and the greater your support, the more rescue opportunities you will create for the Infinite Empire. In principle, the Infinite Empire will conduct rescue operations for all Star Cluster civilizations affected by the war. As Gu Qijue's voice faded, thunderous applause immediately erupted in the holographic conference room. Some people who had previously opposed the Infinite Empire, both openly and secretly, now felt extremely ashamed. Everyone was surprised that, in this moment of crisis, Gu Qijue was willing to provide aid to them, setting aside past grievances. These people were now completely convinced of Gu Qijue's merit. In reality, Gu Qijue wasn't truly setting aside past grievances. Rather, these star cluster civilizations were, regardless of anything else, crucial forces in resisting the Klein people. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, until the Klein people were completely annihilated. These star cluster civilizations and the infinite empire could maintain their friendship. Gu Qijue would not say these things, though, of course, even without him saying them. Many people understood this in their hearts. With the help of the infinite empire, the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster began rescuing and relocating refugees regardless of the cost. The vast majority of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster's citizens used ultra-long-distance spatial transmission devices to teleport directly to the Huenlin Star Cluster. Although the Huenlin Star Cluster was barren land, everyone basically brought a large amount of resources with them, so they didn't have to worry about running out. Tens of thousands of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster's ultra-long-distance spatial transmission devices were even scrapped during this process. Later on, even more ultra-long-distance spatial transmission devices were successively scrapped. The remaining people could only board starships and travel to the Huenlin Star Cluster via spatial warp. If the starships they were taking were ordinary starships without spatial warp capability, they would be in serious trouble. If their own rank had not reached king rank or higher, they might exhaust their entire lifespan during the lengthy interstellar voyage. Of course, no matter what, they were ultimately saved after several days of effort. The surviving citizens of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster were largely evacuated. The star domain originally occupied by the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster was abandoned after the combat troops of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster and the Infinite Empire withdrew, and was completely occupied by the Klein people. Even with the maximum possible aid from the Infinite Empire, the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster suffered extremely heavy losses. The population of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster suffered losses of nearly 2/5. As for the resources of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, about half were lost. The Vermilion Bird civilization, having entered the Huenlin Star Cluster, immediately became one of the weakest star cluster civilizations. 396. A huge fish has been discovered, a hidden dark horse star cluster. During the war in the Amethyst Star Realm, every star cluster civilization that suffered a sudden attack from the Klein people incurred heavy losses. Some star cluster civilizations were completely annihilated, their civilizations severed. Even the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, which had successfully relocated, suffered heavy losses. It is unknown how many years it will take to recover the 1/3 of the population that was lost. As for the loss of about half of their resources, it has made the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster unable to recover quickly. The Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, which was originally above average among the many star cluster-level civilizations, has since fallen to become one of the weakest star cluster civilizations. Currently, the Infinite Empire appears to be the biggest beneficiary of this upheaval. Although the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster relocated to the Huenlin Star Cluster to develop independently rather than merge with the Infinite Empire, there is no doubt that the Infinite Empire is the natural partner for the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster. The Infinite Empire's problems with insufficient resources and population have been largely resolved. In the future, with the Infinite Empire providing technology and the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster providing population and resources, the two sides can engage in extensive cooperation. After the operation to rescue the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster was completely finished, Gu Qijue led the Infinite Legion to shift their focus to other star clusters. He did this partly to save people and partly to seek cooperation. Since these star clusters had nowhere else to go, the Huenlin Star Cluster was practically the best choice. The second star cluster civilization Gu Qijue visited was the Dawn Star Cluster. Compared to the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, the situation in the Dawn Star Cluster was much better. When Gu Qijue arrived at the Dawn Star Cluster, he saw that this star cluster civilization had constructed a large number of war fortresses everywhere. These war fortresses were not ordinary buildings, but gigantic machines as massive as cities. The war fortresses integrated both offense and defense, were capable of normal movement, and could perform spatial jumps. After Gu Qijue scanned the Dawn Star Cluster using the Infinite Engine, he realized that the Klein people had blown up a big fish. The technological level of the Dawn Star Cluster was definitely ranked in the top 10 or even the top 5 within the Star Cluster Alliance. Perhaps the Klein people did not realize how formidable they were, otherwise they wouldn't have chosen to bite this hard bone. When Gu Qijue appeared in the Dawn Star Cluster, the two chief executives of the Dawn civilization were very happy. The Dawn Star Cluster had two chief executives, a pair of twin sisters. The older sister was named Han Mengshuan, and the younger sister was named Han Mengning. Under their governance, the Dawn Star Cluster civilization developed exceptionally well. Moreover, these sisters were extremely intelligent and had been quietly accumulating wealth all along. If the Dawn Star Cluster civilization hadn't been attacked by the Klein people this time, the outside world would never have known how formidable the Dawn Star Cluster truly was. Other star cluster civilizations suffered losses starting at least at 50% during this upheaval. The Dawn Star Cluster was extremely fierce. Their current losses were controlled to around 5%. Before Gu Qijue arrived, they had already formed a confrontation with the Klein people. Chief executives Han Mengxuan and Han Mengning received Gu Qijue in the Chief Executive Hall of the Dawn Star Cluster. Counting the Dawn Star Cluster, Gu Qijue had now visited every star cluster ruled by a female chief executive among the 80-plus star cluster civilizations in the Star Cluster Alliance. In the Star Cluster Alliance, the star clusters ruled by female chief executives included the Hu Star Cluster, the Dawn Star Cluster, the former Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, and the Amethyst Civilization. However, the former chief executive of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, Salisbury, has already stepped down, and the new chief executive is male. As for the Amethyst Civilization, it is ruled jointly by the 4 emperors, and only the southern emperor among the 4 emperors is female. So it cannot be said that the Amethyst Civilization is a civilization ruled by a female chief executive. If the Amethyst Civilization and the Vermilion Bird Civilization are not counted, then there are only 2 civilizations currently ruled by a female chief executive left. After seeing the 2 chief executives of the Dawn Civilization, Gu Qijue said, "The Dawn Civilization seems not to need support." As soon as he finished speaking, Han Mengxuan and Han Mengning spoke in unison, "We need it." After speaking, the sisters exchanged glances and Han Mengxuan spoke. "We basically harvested all the resources of the Dawn Star Cluster a long time ago. Currently, the geographical location of the Dawn Star Cluster is not ideal, and we are willing to move to the Huanlin Star Cluster to develop." The Dawn Star Cluster was at the front line of the conflict, while the Huanlin Star Cluster was relatively far from the battlefield. Furthermore, moving to the Huanlin Star Cluster would gain them 2 powerful allies, the Infinite Empire and the Amethyst Civilization. Han Mengxuan and her sister had long prepared to relocate. They just hadn't known where the best place to move was. After this upheaval occurred, they no longer needed to choose. The closer to the Infinite Empire, the better. When disaster struck, everyone else was focused on sweeping the snow from their own doorstep, ignoring the frost on their neighbor's roof. Only the Infinite Empire extended a helping hand to other star cluster civilizations immediately. This clearly showed that becoming close allies with the Infinite Empire would be very beneficial. Furthermore, the Infinite Empire's technological strength seemed to surpass the Silver Flame Superstar Cluster civilization in many respects. Teaming up with the Infinite Empire for warmth was definitely a promising endeavor. That is why Chief Executive Han Mengxuan and Chief Executive Han Mengning wanted to go to the Huanlin Star Cluster. Gu Qijue had not anticipated that these 2 would want to move to the Huanlin Star Cluster to develop. Nevertheless, Gu Qijue expressed his welcome to them. Gu Qijue nodded slightly and then said, "The Huanlin Star Cluster welcomes you to develop there, but the Dawn Star Cluster's spatial teleportation technology seems to be lacking." Han Mengxuan immediately nodded. "The main focus of the Dawn Star Cluster civilization is mechanical fortresses, as well as the offense and defense of mechanical fortresses. Our spatial teleportation technology can only perform short-range transmissions, not ultra-long-range transmissions. However, Chief Gu should have a way to allow the Dawn Star Cluster civilization to enter the Huanlin Star Cluster, right? Gu Qijue could certainly handle this matter." Gu Qijue thought for a moment and said, "I can use the ultra-long-range spatial teleportation device left behind by the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster to facilitate your transmission. However, if you go to the Huanlin Star Cluster, will it be for long-term development or temporary transit?" Han Mengxuan said without hesitation, "Long-term development. We can contribute 40% of our resources for joint research and development with the Infinite Empire." Her willingness to contribute nearly half of their resources showed her sincerity. Gu Qijue had no intention of rejecting the Dawn Star Cluster. After confirming that the other party genuinely wanted to go to the Huanlin Star Cluster and develop alongside the Infinite Empire, Gu Qijue immediately said, "Afterward, I will lead the Infinite Legion to fend off the enemies for you. You must hurry and use the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster's ultra-long-range spatial teleportation device to complete the transmission." Hearing this, Han Mengshuan and Han Mengning immediately thanked him, saying, "Thank you, Chief Gu." Next, both sides began preparations. Others in the Star Cluster Alliance originally thought that given the strength of the Dawn Star Cluster, they would not abandon their homeland. But everyone clearly hadn't expected that the Dawn Star Cluster had prepared to flee a long time ago. When this opportunity arose, the Dawn Star Cluster immediately fled. 397. Winter has arrived. The League has suffered a major setback. The Huanlin Star Cluster has become quite lively now. People from the Infinite Empire headquarters and the citizens of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster are all busy. They received orders from Gu Qijue and are working overtime to produce ultra-long-distance space teleportation devices. The related devices previously produced in the Infinite Empire's warehouse are being continuously sent to the front lines. At this time, the citizens of the Dawn Star Cluster also arrived here. After the destruction of the Huanlin civilization, this place became very desolate. Initially, only the area where the Infinite Empire headquarters was located had people, other places were uninhabited. It's different now. Nearly half of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster's citizens have come here. However, the people of the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster have clearly not yet emerged from their previous grief. Crying can often be heard in various gathering places. After all, the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster lost half of its citizens, and many people here may have had their relatives and friends remain forever in the original Vermilion Bird Star Cluster. Compared to the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster, the situation of the Dawn Star Cluster is much better. Receiver devices are being set up throughout the Huanlin Star Cluster. Amidst the flashing brilliant white light, numerous citizens of the Dawn Star Cluster are continuously being teleported over. Gu Qijue's trip to the Dawn Star Cluster was undoubtedly the correct decision. After arriving at the Huanlin Star Cluster, the Dawn Star Cluster provided personnel, materials, and equipment. They are willing to work with the Vermilion Bird Star Cluster and the Infinite Empire to accelerate the production of ultra-long-distance space teleportation devices. Not only that, the main combat forces of the Dawn Star Cluster, led by the two chiefs, Han Mengshuan and Han Mengning, are preparing to participate in the rescue operation with Gu Qijue's Infinite Legion. Of course, there is a prerequisite. All citizens of the Dawn Star Cluster must be transferred first. Unlike other Star Cluster civilizations, the Dawn Star Cluster possesses an extremely strong sense of impending crisis and had long prepared to flee. When Chief Han Mengshuan and Chief Han Mengning organized the evacuation, the speed of the evacuation was very fast. After the Dawn Star Cluster evacuated, its original star domain basically only had a large number of planets with no development value left. The Klein people's attack on the Dawn Star Cluster was a losing venture. After all the citizens of the Dawn Star Cluster evacuated, Gu Qijue led the Infinite Legion and the Dawn Legion to other star systems. While Gu Qijue was moving between various locations, the battle on the Amethyst battlefield was raging fiercely. However, at this time, Gu Qijue had no time to spare. He had at least left half of the Infinite Legion's combat forces on the Amethyst battlefield, and the main forces of all parties were basically there. If they still couldn't win, there was nothing more to be done. With the addition of the Dawn Legion, the Infinite Empire's rescue speed increased significantly. However, many Star Cluster civilizations can basically be declared doomed. Their civilizations have been destroyed by over 95%, or even more severely. The last survivors of a vast Star Cluster-level civilization are less than 1% of its original population. The battle between the Star Cluster Alliance and the Klein people in the Amethyst Star Realm was the largest battle to date. The Klein people's harassment of the headquarters of various Star Cluster civilizations also caused the Star Cluster Alliance its greatest losses ever. Gu Qijue's rescue operation lasted for a full 20 days before ending. During these 20 days, his Infinite Legion and allied Dawn Legion moved between more than 30 star clusters, conducting rescue operations. After the rescue operation ended, Gu Qijue was unable to return to the Huanlin Star Cluster to rest. After his matters were concluded, the Great War in the Amethyst Star Realm was still ongoing. Moreover, the Star Cluster Alliance also needed to invite him to participate in the next meeting. Star Cluster Alliance Holographic Conference Room. The head of the Infinite Empire, Gu Qijue, who had been missing for 20 days, came online again. Seeing his appearance, God of Brightness immediately asked, "Chief Gu, do you have any other intelligence to upload?" Gu Qijue shook his head. "All the intelligence I collected during the rescue operation has been uploaded and made public." "What is the current state of the Star Cluster Alliance?" Why is the battle in the Amethyst Star Realm still continuing? After he asked. Gu Qijue, the chief of the Hu Star Cluster, replied, "The Star Cluster Alliance's situation is very bad. According to the data uploaded by Chief Gu, in the past 20 days, 14 Star Cluster civilizations have been destroyed by the Klein people. Besides these destroyed Star Cluster civilizations, some Star Cluster civilizations have chosen to withdraw from the Star Cluster Alliance. The current Star Cluster Alliance only has 60 Star Cluster members left." Gu Qijue was unaware of these situations, but he was not surprised. If something goes smoothly and is profitable, more and more people will join in, hoping to make a fortune. But if they encounter resistance, some people will waver, and if the resistance is too great, many will choose to give up. The current situation is clearly just that. In the holographic conference room, the atmosphere became somewhat oppressive. The chiefs of many Star Cluster civilizations initially never thought that one of their policy errors would lead to such serious consequences. Everyone knew even more clearly that without Gu Qijue, this firefighter, the Star Cluster Alliance's losses would have been even more severe. Because the Klein people also became desperate, this time they used a pawn sacrifice tactic. That is, to exchange the lives of the Klein people on the Amethyst battlefield for the lives of the citizens of many Star Cluster civilizations in their headquarters. This brutal tactic of the Klein people was quite effective. Although they suffered heavy losses on the Amethyst battlefield, they destroyed 14 Star Cluster civilizations and crippled more than 10 others. Some Star Cluster-level civilizations were even so frightened that they directly withdrew from the Star Cluster Alliance. After learning about the current situation, Gu Qijue asked, "What are your thoughts, everyone?" God of Brightness spoke, "Go all out and take down the Klein people on the Amethyst battlefield." This was Gu Qijue's suggestion more than 20 days ago, but unfortunately, no one listened to him then. So when God of Brightness brought up this suggestion again, many chiefs of Star Cluster civilizations, including God of Brightness himself, felt somewhat ashamed. Many things are indeed a case of "don't say I didn't warn you." Gu Qijue had no interest in mocking them this time. Even if he slapped each of these Star Cluster civilization chiefs, it wouldn't kill the Klein people. After God of Brightness made his suggestion, Gu Qijue calmly said, "The Infinite Empire agrees." Gu Qijue immediately followed. The Hu Star Cluster agrees. Wulumi quickly expressed his stance. The Amethyst civilization agrees. God of Brightness calmly stated. The Silver Flame civilization agrees. This time, without any further surprises, all 60 star clusters of the Star Cluster Alliance agreed to go all out. The battle on the Amethyst battlefield, though not over, was nearing its end. Once all parties had made up their minds and resolved to act, the Klein people, already at a disadvantage, were naturally no longer a match. In this confrontation, the Star Cluster Alliance and the Klein people each had one victory and one defeat. Both sides secured victory on the battlefields where they had placed heavy bets. 398. The 7th Council member, peace talks or a fight to the death. Gu Qijue did not participate in the final stage of the Amethyst Star Realm War. The war had already ended before he even arrived at the Amethyst Star Realm. Many Klein people evacuated from the Amethyst Star Realm and began constructing bases around it. Although they were defeated in the recent war, the Star Cluster Alliance also suffered heavy losses. These Klein people, unwilling to give up their wicked intentions, had already begun preparing for the next major war. As more and more Klein people entered this star domain, the Alliance did not press the advantage. Currently, the Star Cluster Alliance's combat forces were exhausted and lacked the strength to engage in a second major war with the Klein people. Star Cluster Alliance, holographic conference room. The General Assembly of the Star Cluster Alliance members was convened once again. After everyone arrived, the God of Brightness, as the Alliance leader of the Star Cluster Alliance, informed everyone of several decisions. These decisions were not made by the God of Brightness alone. Before making these decisions, the God of Brightness had privately solicited opinions from all parties. Therefore, when the God of Brightness announced these matters, no one was surprised. The God of Brightness said, "Before the start of this general meeting of the Star Cluster Alliance, we will first make some adjustments to the Star Cluster Alliance's high-level personnel." According to the latest news, 3 of the 8 directors of the Star Cluster Alliance died in the recent war. We will be appointing new additions to the Star Cluster Alliance's director positions. We hereby appoint Alfred, the Deputy Alliance Leader of the Star Cluster Alliance, as the first director. We appoint Wulumi, the Supreme Commander of the Amethyst Civilization's Combat Department, as the Deputy Alliance leader of the Star Cluster Alliance. This order carries two layers of meaning. The first meaning is that a representative of the Amethyst civilization has become part of the Star Cluster Alliance's high-level leadership. The second meaning is that Alfred, the former Deputy Alliance leader of the Star Cluster Alliance, performed poorly in the previous war. Otherwise, the one being replaced would not have been him, but the other Deputy Alliance leader, Xuan Lingji. After the God of Brightness finished speaking, Alfred's and Wulumi's positions in the holographic conference room changed. Wulumi appeared on the right side of the God of Brightness, while Alfred appeared in the seat of the first director. The voice of the God of Brightness soon continued. We appoint Satya, the former third director, as the second director. We appoint Gu Qijue, the former seventh director, as the fifth director. We appoint Han Wenjiang, the former eighth director, as the sixth director. We appoint Gu Qijue, the head of the Infinite Empire, as the seventh director. We appoint Chen Xiao, the head of the Zhige civilization, as the eighth director, in one breath. The God of Brightness finished announcing the personnel changes for the Star Cluster Alliance. Most people were not surprised by this outcome. They had known about it beforehand. Although some who had not received prior notice were slightly astonished, they were not overly surprised or unable to accept it. In their view, these adjustments were quite appropriate. After adjusting the Star Cluster Alliance's high-level personnel, the God of Brightness continued to discuss an urgent matter that needed immediate attention. In the recent war, both the Star Cluster Alliance and the Klein people suffered heavy losses. The prolonged conflict has also made both the Star Cluster Alliance and the Klein people realize something. Even if there is a gap in strength between the two sides, that gap is limited. In the short term, the Star Cluster Alliance cannot eliminate the Klein people, nor can the Klein people eliminate the Star Cluster Alliance. Recently, representatives from the Klein people's side contacted the Star Cluster Alliance. Their intention is that if the Star Cluster Alliance is willing to cede some interests, then the Star Cluster Alliance and the Klein people can coexist peacefully. Regarding this matter, what are the opinions of the two Deputy Alliance leaders, the 8 directors, and the various heads of the Star Cluster Alliance? Unlike before, this news announced by the God of Brightness was known only to a very few individuals. Therefore, when the God of Brightness revealed this news, the expressions of many heads of the Star Cluster civilizations changed abruptly. Everyone's expressions were very complex. Some heads were furious, their eyes bloodshot, clearly belonging to the hardline faction who wished to fight to the death and were unwilling to talk peace. Other heads, however, looked relatively relieved, as if a great weight had finally been lifted from their hearts. Compared to the complete destruction of their civilization, ceding a few interests to the Klein people was not unacceptable. Such people clearly ignored the lesson of ceding 5 cities today and 10 cities tomorrow, thus cherishing a glimmer of hope and desiring peace. While the heads of the other star clusters were still pondering, Alfred, the first director from the Lee's star cluster, spoke up to state his position. I represent the Lee's star cluster and agree to peace talks. The prolonged war has caused immense depletion to the Star Cluster Alliance. If the fighting continues, the Star Cluster Alliance will suffer even greater losses. Since we can exchange peace for smaller losses, why shouldn't we? After Alfred finished speaking, Satya, the second director from the Eternal Star Cluster, also stated his position. I represent the Eternal Star Cluster and agree to peace talks. At its peak, the Star Cluster Alliance had nearly 90 Star Cluster members. However, the Star Cluster Alliance now only has 60 members remaining. Although the Klein people also suffered casualties in the previous war, our losses are undoubtedly more severe. We could not defeat the Klein people even during our strongest period. Now, our chances of victory against the Klein people are certainly lower. Therefore, I propose that everyone agrees to peace talks. After Alfred and Satya spoke, many people exchanged glances. However, some people were swayed by Alfred and Satya. At this point, everyone could only turn their gaze toward the remaining directors, as well as the Alliance leader and the 2 Deputy Alliance leaders. As everyone watched, the God of Brightness stated his position. The Silver Flame Civilization abstains. The Silver Flame Civilization's stance this time was neither pro-war nor pro-peace. This indicates that multiple opinions exist within the Silver Flame Civilization. Unable to decide immediately, the Silver Flame Civilization would make its decision based on the choices of others. Wulumi's statement, however, surprised everyone somewhat. He glanced at Gu Qijue, then said, "The decision of the Infinite Empire is the decision of the Amethyst Civilization." The Amethyst civilization was clearly supporting the Infinite Empire, which immediately made Gu Qijue's opinion extremely critical. As the most influential head in the Star Cluster Alliance, Gu Qijue was already a barometer. After Wulumi made such a statement, people's attention naturally shifted more toward him. The other deputy alliance leader was Xuan Lingji of the Heavenly God Star Cluster. Her opinion also came as a surprise to many. The Heavenly God Star Cluster is neither pro-war nor pro-peace. If the majority of others favor peace, the Heavenly God Star Cluster will withdraw from the Star Cluster Alliance and relocate to another star domain. After the Alliance leader and the two deputy Alliance leaders stated their positions, many eyes fell upon the remaining 6 directors who had yet to speak. To everyone's surprise, the 3rd director through the 6th director all abstained, refusing to state a position. 399, a strong statement, the election results are not recognized. The actions of Gu Qijue and the other 3, while surprising, were also understandable. After all, even the God of Brightness was indecisive and chose to observe. So they were even more so. Gu Qijue and the 3 others consecutively abstaining caused everyone to focus their attention on Gu Qijue and Chen Zhao. The Star Cluster Alliance has 11 high-ranking members. Currently, 2 votes favored peace and 6 abstained. Only Gu Qijue, Chen Zhao, and Wulumi's 3 votes remained, and Gu Qijue alone could represent 2 votes at this time. Therefore, his decision became crucial. If he also advocated for peace, then there would be no need for further discussion. After all the high-ranking members of the Star Cluster Alliance were already prepared for peace talks. Before Gu Qijue could speak, Chen Zhao from the Zhige Star Cluster spoke first. I don't know the situation of other Star Cluster civilizations, but in the previous Great War in the Amethyst Star Realm, the Zhige civilization should have been the biggest contributor, apart from the Infinite Empire, the Amethyst civilization, and the Silver Flame civilization. The contributions we made came at the cost of immense sacrifice. The current Zhige civilization is no longer capable of fighting. However, I do not advocate for peace, I choose to abstain. After Chen Zhao abstained, Gu Qijue became the absolute key. His single vote now could almost determine the future direction of the Star Cluster Alliance. Many people became worried at this moment. Even Wulumi of the Amethyst civilization felt a little nervous. He really didn't expect that such an important matter could result in 9 abstentions. Under everyone's gaze, Gu Qijue slowly rose, looked around, and said, "The Infinite Empire advocates war." His voice was firm and resonant, causing many hearts to tremble, and then let out a long sigh of relief. Having made so many sacrifices and accumulated so much hatred, in the eyes of many, only one could exist, the Star Cluster Alliance or the Klein people. After Gu Qijue stated his position, Satya glanced at Gu Qijue, then looked at the God of Brightness and said, "Your Excellency God of Brightness, how about we conduct an anonymous vote on this matter? This anonymous vote can only be for war or peace, no abstentions. How does that sound?" Hearing this, many people had new thoughts, and Satya, at this moment, voiced the thoughts in everyone's hearts. If we continue to fight the Klein people, even Chief Gu must admit that we cannot eliminate the Klein people in a short time. If we negotiate peace with the Klein people, there are 2 possible outcomes. First, after we concede some benefits, the Klein people choose to live in peace with us. Second, the Klein people break their word and continue to attack us. If it's the first scenario, that would undoubtedly be the best news for everyone. If it's the second scenario, as long as we remain highly vigilant before and after the peace talks and are always ready for battle. Even if there are peace talks, we should treat it as if there weren't any. If the Klein people don't keep their promises, we can effectively counterattack them. Chief Gu, what do you think? Satya's words swayed many people. Because his plan was feasible, the Star Cluster Alliance would prepare for battle and then negotiate peace with the other side. If it succeeded, that would be great. If it failed or something unexpected happened, it wouldn't matter. After all, the Star Cluster Alliance was prepared for a major war, better safe than sorry. After Satya's inquiry, Gu Qijue responded powerfully with a calm tone. Regardless of the voting results, regardless of how other star clusters choose, the Infinite Empire will fight the Klein people to the end. In short, the Infinite Empire advocates war and does not acknowledge the peace talk vote. Gu Qijue's rigidity made the atmosphere in the conference room very solemn. Seeing this, Satya could only say, in that case, let's proceed with an anonymous vote first. If the result is for war, then there's nothing more to say. Chief Gu is for war, and everyone else acknowledges the voting results. If the voting result is for peace, Then we can further communicate and discuss with Chief Gu and the others. Many people agreed to Satya's proposal. Gu Qijue didn't hesitate and immediately voted for war. A holographic screen for anonymous voting now appeared before everyone. The voting results quickly came out, and they were very surprising, because the result was 41 star clusters for peace and 19 star clusters for war. This meant that, given a choice between two options, many star cluster civilizations actually chose peace talks. After this result appeared, the god of brightness could only look at Gu Qijue and ask, "Chief Gu, what is your opinion?" Gu Qijue smiled and retorted, "Your Excellency, God of Brightness, what is your opinion?" The God of Brightness felt a bit awkward upon hearing this, as he had just voted for peace talks, but he would never say such a thing. The numerical advantage of the peace faction made Satya's attitude firm. He looked at Gu Qijue and said, "Chief Gu, are you still unwilling to compromise?" Gu Qijue casually said, "The Infinite Empire does not acknowledge this voting result, and the Infinite Empire's stance will never change." After he finished speaking, Wulumi awkwardly said, "The Amethyst civilization supports Chief Gu's decision, but the Amethyst civilization also obeys the Star Cluster Alliance's decision." Wulumi's words were very cunning, because the current decision of the Star Cluster Alliance was contrary to Gu Qijue's decision. If he obeyed the Star Cluster Alliance's decision, how could he still support Gu Qijue's decision? The meeting reached a complete deadlock here. As the atmosphere in the conference room grew increasingly tense and solemn, the God of Brightness made a decision. This matter will be temporarily put aside. Let all parties go back and consider it carefully. We can first strive to maintain a brief peace with the Klein people. Once everyone has clearly considered it, we will conduct a new round of voting. For now, that's all. The God of Brightness, as usual, chose to be a fence-sitter. But this matter was not so easily glossed over. Alfred and Satya had already made up their minds to seek peace. Gu Qijue, however, was unyielding and refused to bend, determined to fight the enemy to the death. Even if another vote were held next time, the final outcome would likely be no different from today, unless someone could persuade Gu Qijue or Alfred during this time. As everyone was about to leave, Gu Qijue calmly said, "Everyone in the next 3 days. Those willing to fight the Klein people to the death can privately contact the Infinite Empire." After he finished speaking, his holographic image completely disappeared from the conference room. Although many people had just voted for peace talks, upon hearing Gu Qijue's words, over 40 heads of state still decided to contact the Infinite Empire. Peace talks were option 1, but they did not trust the Klein people, so they wanted to keep a backup plan. 400. The best strategy is to outwit the enemy, uphold the call to arms. Persisting in something until it succeeds is undoubtedly very difficult. The war between the Star Cluster Alliance and the Klein people has not only been protracted but also offers almost no hope of victory. In such circumstances, wanting to persevere to the end naturally becomes even more difficult. Even lower organisms have the instinct to seek advantage and avoid harm, and higher organisms will, of course, do the same subtly. If the fighting continues, no one knows when victory will come, or even if victory can ultimately be achieved. Stopping now and making peace, however, can bring a temporary calm after ceding some interests. Facing such a situation, making a choice is not a difficult matter. Heavy Cold Star, Infinite Empire, Chief Executive Hall. At this moment, head of the Infinite Empire Gu Qijue and Han Yiming, one of the vice heads of state of the Infinite Empire, were both here. Below them, representatives from over 30 star cluster civilizations had gathered. After everyone had arrived, Gu Qijue stood up and said, "The Star Cluster Alliance and the Klein people cannot coexist. If the Star Cluster Alliance lacks the strength to resist the Klein people, then the day the Klein people are in a bad mood will be the doomsday for the Star Cluster Alliance. To achieve peace, we must fight to the death. The Klein people's current strategy is to divide and conquer us. In the Great War in the Amethyst Star Realm, the Klein people were dealt a heavy blow by the Star Cluster Alliance. They already know what kind of power the Star Cluster Alliance possesses when united. So they employed a strategy of division and disintegration, and their strategy has been successful. Without deploying a single soldier or firing a single shot, they have shaken the resolve of most of the Star Cluster Alliance. Of the 60 current members of the Star Cluster Alliance, more than 20 star clusters did not send representatives to participate in today's meeting. I predict that an even more brutal war is about to break out." Gu Qijue stopped there and did not continue. The representatives of the various star cluster civilizations looked at each other at this moment. Some felt that Gu Qijue made sense, while others believed that Gu Qijue was merely fear-mongering. The representative of the Silver Flame civilization requested to speak at this time. Gu Qijue nodded slightly and said, "Please speak." The representative rose, bowed respectfully to Gu Qijue. Then he said, "Chief Gu, to deal with the upcoming changes, what should our many participating star clusters do today? Should we each go back and prepare? Or should there be other joint actions?" This question was of interest to many. After the representative of the Silver Flame civilization asked, the surrounding people all looked at Gu Qijue. Gu Qijue pondered for a moment and said, "Once fighting breaks out, it is very likely to occur in the headquarters of each star cluster. In such a situation, it will be difficult for our various parties to carry out joint actions. However, after each star cluster civilization completes its own combat missions, it should actively support other surrounding star clusters. If the various parties are defeated one by the Klein people, the Star Cluster Alliance will truly reach a dead end." After returning, everyone would convey Gu Qijue's words to the heads of their respective star cluster civilizations. Their trip to the Infinite Empire, besides attending the conference convened by Gu Qijue, was also to purchase weapons and equipment from the Infinite Empire. The major star clusters that appeared in the Infinite Empire this time were undoubtedly all clever people. They were preparing for peace talks on one hand, and purchasing weapons to prepare for war on the other. When the peace talks officially began later, they would also be ready to start a war at any time during the negotiations. As for those who didn't come this time, it can basically be assumed that they have been fooled by the Klein people. These people naively believe that the Klein people can be bought off with a few small favors. If a wild dog comes to your doorstep, you can certainly send it away with 2 meaty bones. But if a group of bandits comes to your doorstep, trying to send them away with 2 meaty bones is self-deception. This principle is not complicated, yet more than 20 star clusters simply refuse to understand it. Gu Qijue was not stingy with any of the star cluster representatives who came to the Infinite Empire for this conference. Although the Amethyst War had ended, when everyone purchased various weapons and equipment from the Infinite Empire, Gu Qijue still gave them some extra weapons and equipment as gifts. Any star cluster that is willing to be a friend of the Infinite Empire, the Infinite Empire will certainly not disappoint them. After this meeting, Gu Qijue once again began to strive for a higher rank. During this period, the Infinite Empire had accumulated a vast amount of wealth. Even if Gu Qijue were to advance from D rank to C rank, requiring a large consumption of energy stones, he would at most only consume 1/50th of the energy stones accumulated by the Infinite Empire during this time. The Star Cluster Alliance and the Klein people also seem to have entered a brief period of peace during this time. Ceasefires were gradually implemented in many places. This situation led many people to begin questioning Gu Qijue's motives. In the Star Cluster Alliance communication channel, citizens from 60 star clusters were arguing fiercely. A portion of the people strongly supported Gu Qijue. Another portion, however, began to question Gu Qijue. Is the Infinite Empire's disagreement with peace talks really not to continue selling weapons and equipment? Right. If the Infinite Empire is already the Star Cluster Alliance